What's up YouTube, and welcome to the ultimate beginner's guide to Palworld. This game has been breaking records and is an amazing experience. I will say many people are calling this game Pokemon with guns, but I do have to warn you, don't go in expecting a Pokemon game. The gameplay is more similar to Arc or Rust, but you have Pokemon to help you on your journey. You will also see clips within this guide where I am leveling up really quickly. Don't go in expecting your progress to be that fast. The reason I am leveling up so fast is because I turned... Hi there, this is future me. After editing this video, I realized that my hours worth of footage are like 1 frame per second because I decided to use OBS to record my gameplay rather than the Elgato application itself. So I had to remake all of the footage for this video. Rather than starting my entire character over, which is what I originally did, was I had a whole new character and world set just to make this video so you could follow along with me. Well, I'm no longer doing that. So instead, what you're going to see is still a lower level character, but I'm not going to be starting from level 1, but in the footage, it's going to look kind of like I am. I'm going to do the things that I did in the original video in short clips, but it's not going to be as authentic. It shouldn't ruin the video, but yeah, I wasn't going to re-record 3 to 4 hours worth of gameplay footage starting from scratch again. So I just recorded it in short bursts depending on what I'm talking about. And it made it much easier to recompile everything. So anyway, the video should still be good. It's still a great guide, so please stay tuned. And yeah, back to the show. Up the XP on this world for the sake of the video. Without that boost, this video would have taken me weeks to make. However, I do still show you ways to level up fast. I also need to mention that this guide is not going to cover every little detail and nuance in the game, as this is just meant to be a general guide to help jumpstart you into a successful mid to late game. This video is not only for beginners but returning players as well. Much of this guide consists of things I wish I did differently in my first playthrough. Anyway, without further ado, let's jump right into this beginner's guide to Palworld. So the first thing you're going to want to do when you enter the island is grab this fast travel location. It's these big towers with the eagle on top. These are very important that you interact with every single one of these that you see as you're traveling across the world. The reason these are important is they are fast travel locations. You can use them to fast travel across the map. This will be very important to you later in the game, as it'll be much easier to traverse the terrain with fast traveling than to physically walk or fly everywhere. Once you first enter the island and you walk out and you're seeing the world for the first time, you're going to want to collect as many materials off the ground as you can pick up. You're going to want to punch trees, and you're going to want to collect wood. Once you have enough wood, you want to build a primitive workbench and craft a pickaxe and an axe. You're going to use the pickaxe for mining large stones, and the blue stones that you'll see scattered across the world. Those are paldium. They're a very important crafting material for most things, but they are primarily used for crafting pal balls, which are Palworld's version of Pokeballs. You're going to want to collect as many materials as you possibly can until you run out of carry space. Catch 10 of each pal you see at the start. So every pal you see, you're going to want to try and catch 10 of them. The reason being is because you get an XP bonus for the first 10 of one kind of pal that you catch. This is really going to help jumpstart you to level progression. So in order to do that, you're obviously going to have to create pal balls. On the primitive workbench, you can do this once you unlock them. I believe it's level 2. So now the most important pals that you're going to want right off the bat. You want to catch them all, but the most important ones that we're going to use later are Lamball, which is going to be your first pal that you're going to use at your base. We will get into base building a little bit further down in the guide. We don't want to build a base yet. We have a very specific place we want to place that base, so don't start base building quite yet when you first enter the island. The next pal you're going to want to catch is called Foxparks. This is going to be your primary combat companion for early to mid game. The next pal is Pengulet. It's another decent combat pal, but it will be really important later, also in base building. You're going to want to stay in the starter area until you get to level 5, so work on catching as many pals as you possibly can and slowly level up to level 5. A pro tip, if nighttime comes around while you're still grinding to level 5, you don't have to build your first base. I know you're going to start dying because it's cold. If you have a Fox Parks from right off the bat and you throw him out, he will warm you up during the nighttime, so you don't need clothes right off the bat. Once you hit level 5, you want to unlock these tools with your technology points. Make sure you have caught 10 lamb balls because their wool will be important for an item we need before we head to where we will build our first base. We're going to start making our way to the Desolate Church. This is right next to where we're going to be building our first base. The item we'll need to get there is this parachute that will allow us to glide across a river that's in our way. This is the location on the map. I'm going to speed up the clip though so you can follow along, as most of your map is going to be black anyway when you start out. Another thing to note, before you head to the Desolate Church, you're going to want to use the primitive workbench to create yourself a glider. You will need this to traverse this river that we're going to cross, and you'll see me use it when we get there. Once you reach the Desolate Church, you'll want to go behind it where you'll see a bunch of shiny rocks. These give you ore, which become a core resource later in the game. Collecting as much of it as possible early game will help you immensely down the road, which is why we are building our first base here. Later, this base is actually going to act as our second base, and we aren't going to build a lot of structures here. We're going to keep structures here to a minimum and only build what is necessary to upgrade our PAL box. So, you're probably wondering how the PAL box works. When you place the PAL box, you will create your first base. Here you can put PALs at the base and in the box, which is essentially just PAL storage, similar to boxes in Pokemon. You can also use the PAL box to fast travel to other fast travel locations, and there's also an option to upgrade it. To upgrade the PAL box, you will first have to complete the missions located in the upgrade menu. They typically consist of building some kind of structures. Once you get to PAL box level 10, it's around level 15, 16 character level, maybe 17, you will be able to build a second base. The second base will become your new primary base where you'll build the majority of your structures, and this first base we built will simply be utilized as a mining facility for ore to make ingots. One other thing I need to add, make sure that you get all of these ores within the vicinity of the base. One thing I messed up was if you place your PAL box where I placed mine, you're not going to be able to have all of the ores within the base. Make sure that you move the PAL box back a little bit so that way all of the ores are within the circumference of the base. Now that that's out of the way, you'll now want to build a ranch. The ranch is going to be a little bit hard to place. Just try to find a place where it lets you place it and add a lamb ball to work at your base. The reason we are starting out with lamb ball is so he can produce wool, which we will need to make cloth for early armor and clothes. Now you'll want to go ahead and place a workbench, a repair station, and as many chests as possible so you can store resources. Go ahead and also build lamb ball a PAL bed so that way it doesn't get stressed, which ultimately lowers productivity. At this point, you can go ahead and build yourself a 1x1 structure and make yourself a bed. Unlike what I did in this clip, make sure you add a roof or you won't be able to place your bed. At this point, I would also build a berry farm and a food box. I would also place a pengullet at the base for watering the crops. We will eventually have the system fully automated, but for now we will have to do most of the work. If you're short on berry seeds, you can fast travel back to the starting area and collect more at the berry bushes scattered throughout the area. I recommend having at least 2 berry plantations. I would also make yourself some clothes by crafting cloth out of the wool from the ranch, and then making the cloth outfit. At this point, we need to go to get our next vital starting PAL. To find him, you'll want to fast travel to Rain Syndicate Tower. If you don't have it unlocked, this is where it is on the map. It's really close to the starting area. You can't miss it. Literally, if you go back to the starting area, you can just follow the path all the way down and you'll run into it. It's a giant tower. Go to where my character is. It's a little bit close to the area. Just follow along where my character is headed. Here, you're going to want to run back and forth until you find a Tansy. This little green monkey is a great combat pal from beginning to even mid-game. Eventually, you can build it an AK-47, pretty much, that mows down enemies. You should be catching as many pals as possible at this point because of the XP boost you get for the first 10 of every kind of pal you get. Right now, you really only need a minimum of 2 Tansies, but I do recommend catching more if you have the resources. You're going to want 1 for combat and 1 for your base. That's the reason we want a minimum of 2. You can go ahead and go back to your base and add the Tansy to your base. This is a good time now to explain stats and tasks that pals can do. Remember, this is a beginner's guide, so I'm only going into the basics for the sake of this video. This clip was made using my primary account for better visuals. There are 12 work suitabilities that each pal has. This decides what work a pal can do. The kindling ability is anything dealing with fire, so cooking and smelting. Planting, lumbering, cooling, generating electricity, watering, mining, and medicine production are all pretty self-explanatory. Handiwork is used to craft things at a workbench. Transporting means pals will grab stuff off the ground and place them in chests automatically. Gathering means pals will go to production structures, which we'll get into later, and drop stuff on the ground so that transport pals can store them, such as berries in the plantation. When they are ready to be harvested, they will be the ones to harvest them automatically. Starting out, you want to use pals that have multiple suitabilities, as you don't have a lot of slots for pals within the base. However, mid to late game, you will want pals with more specific suitabilities so they don't get distracted and start working on other projects that are less important to your progress. You will also notice each work suitability has a level next to it. The higher the level, the faster they work. Some projects will also require a higher level for a pal to do it as well. For example, ore mining cannot be done by a pal with level 1 mining. It has to be done by a level 2 miner or above. The next important part to understand is passive skills. Each pal you catch may have a passive skill. I am not going to get into what each one is, but I will explain the basic things you want to look out for. Passive skills can either be positive or negative, but don't think that a negative passive skill automatically means that the pal is worthless. Some passive skills only affect combat, and some only affect work speed. For example, this Taco has the Slacker passive skill. This means that although I would never use him in my base because of his terrible work speed, he still might be useful in combat. I don't have a good example, but some pals will have amazing combat-oriented passive skills, but really negative work speed skills. This just means that that pal would be best suited for combat use only. So keep an eye on passive skills and utilize each pal in the best way possible. Now, the reason we added Tansy to the base is because he has planting, gathering, and transporting suitability. Him along with Pengullet will now make our berry farm fully automated. Don't forget to always add a pal bed to the base anytime you add a new pal. Now you're going to focus on getting the base up a couple levels, as the first 4 or so are relatively easy early in the game. Once you reach base level 5, we will take a break from base building for now and collect a couple more vital pals. If you haven't already, craft yourself at least 20 pal balls and at least 50 to 100 arrows and a bow. We will need this for the next pals we're going after. You will then head to this area on your map. I would just place down a marker to get an approximate location. It's around this area that dire howls will spawn. This will be your first mount. There are other mounts earlier in the game, but this is the best early game mount for speed efficiency and strength. Catch as many as you can without dying and then head to the nearest fast travel point. Go ahead and travel back to your base. If you're not already at least level 9, go ahead and start catching as many pals early game as you can that you haven't caught 10 of yet, and get yourself up to level 9. Now what you're going to want to do is use your technology points to unlock the pal workbench and the Dire Howl's saddle. Go ahead and build the saddle if you can. If not, collect the necessary materials for it. You will notice one of the ingredients you need to make it is leather, which you likely don't have. To get leather quickly and semi-easily, you will want to head back to the starting area. I'm sure you have already seen the purple deer running around. Targeting these is one of the quickest way to get lots of leather. Also, if you haven't already, I'd recommend crafting a common shield, using technology points that unlocks at level 4. This will boost your health a bit, as these guys can be a little tough. Make sure you roll away from their charge attack, as it can do a lot of damage. Once you have at least 10 leather, head back to your base and craft the Dire Howl saddle. Now you can ride your Dire Howl, opening up a much quicker mode of transportation. You can also go ahead and upgrade your base to level 6 by building the Statue of Power. The next PAL we need is vital to our base. This PAL is actually the reason we built the base here. We need to find Tombat, which will be our first level 2 miner and will mine much of the ore out of our base. This PAL only spawns at night, so you'll have to wait until nighttime for this PAL to spawn. While we wait though, we will search for another PAL. This PAL will be our first flying map. Go to Rain Syndicate Tower and run around the plains area below, keeping your eye on the sky. Eventually you'll find a flying PAL that I recommend catching as early as possible. Once caught, you will unlock its saddle at level 15. Anyway, now that it's nighttime, you will want to go back to your base. This area is where Tombat will spawn. Make sure you actually leave your base though, because they're unlikely to spawn inside of the base. You want to try and catch 2 to 3, or if you're up to the challenge, catch all 10 for the XP boost. Unfortunately, I only caught 1 before I ran out of PAL balls. Go ahead and add Tombat to your base, and you should start mining ore. This will give you a solid head start down the road, where ores become one of the most important resources in mid to late game. Go ahead and build a logging site, stone pit, and crusher. These are unlocked using technology points at level 7 and 8. You should be at this point by now, so it shouldn't be too hard. The crusher is eventually what you will use to get Paldium fragments more easily, and it allows you to turn stone into Paldium. To utilize the crusher, it requires the watering work suitability, which luckily Pengullet has, so that'll be your primary PAL used to make Paldium fragments in early to mid game. All of these sites will be moved to our second base so that PALs at this one can focus primarily on ore, but place them for now in order to level up your base. Now, keep focusing on leveling up and upgrading your base. Travel around on Dire Howl and catch as many PALs as you can, preferably PALs you haven't caught 10 of. Unlock and build everything the base requires until you reach base level 10. When you reach the hot spring, I recommend killing a bunch of Pengullets for PAL fluids because you're likely to be short on these. They're also a good source of ice organs, which are going to be needed for the cooler that will upgrade your base from level 9 to 10. T-Fints are also a good source of PAL fluids. The primitive furnace will also require flame organs. You can farm these easily by catching and killing foxparks. Once you get to base level 8, you will need to create a high level workbench. This is the first item that requires ingots. Using the furnace, either add a foxparks to your base or throw the one in your party at the furnace to power it. This will smelt the ore that Tombats have been mining into ingots, which will be used for crafting anything involving metal, including nails. Nails can be crafted at your workbench using the ingots you smelted. I would just make a minimum amount of nails that you need for now, so you don't waste precious ingots. Just make sure you've unlocked nails on your technology tree at level 10. Now you should be at base level 10. You can now begin to build your second base. The first thing I would do is place chests next to everything you've built thus far. We are now going into the build menu and press the disassemble button. We're going to get rid of everything now except for our chests, the PAL beds, the repair bench, and workstation, the hot spring and our crops and feed box. If you so choose, I would also recommend leaving a furnace. As you disassemble, you will get weighed down, which is why you should place a chest down close to you before you do a ton of disassembling. That way you can immediately put everything in the chest. Now I would take all of the PALs out of this base except for a planter, a waterer, a transporter, maybe 2, and then fill the rest of the base with Tombats to focus on mining ore. Similar to this, however, I don't have but the one Tombat I caught earlier. Theoretically, you will fill all the empty spaces with Tombats. Now there's a couple of ways you can proceed. You can build your base in a place with more ore, or just find an empty flat area to make a hub. On my main world, I did the latter. Either way, you want to make sure you have enough space to build everything you need. As you can see in my mid-game base, I prioritized farming and wood and stone production. This combined with the first base we made created a fine-tuned machine where you have to do little to no grinding. Once you hit level 20, this is approximately what your technology tree should look like, with some variances of course. Now for the last part of this video, boss battles and combat. Up until level 20, you should be using the crossbow. Once you unlock the crossbow, it is likely safe to start taking on the first tower. You will also find wild bosses throughout the world. I have found that you can take these on from about 5 levels below the level of the boss. So essentially, if the boss is level 30, you can probably take it on safely around level 25. Just expect to make sure you're prepared, because it could be somewhat difficult. Continue exploring the world using Nightwing and Dire Howl and catch as many pals as you can. Some good pals to have on your team include Fox Parks, which can be used as a flamethrower with his harness, Tansy, whose assault rifle can mow down enemies, and to finish out the team, I like to have my flying mount and 2 Daydreams with their necklace equipped, because they can do really good background damage while you and your team fight the big fight. I find that this strategy worked best for me when taking on bosses in early to mid game. Once you reach level 30 though, it'll be time to rethink your team and strategize more, ensuring you are taking advantage of type matchups. This chart right here will explain how type matchups work in Palworld. Okay, this concludes our beginner's guide to Palworld. This is obviously a beginner's guide and not an advanced guide. I didn't show you a lot of, what some of the best pals are and things like that. If you guys are interested, I can make an advanced guide. If that's something you might be interested in, like the video and leave a comment saying that you'd like an advanced guide, and I can go into more detail on some of the pals and some of the specialties and things that they can do. There's also more that you can do with your base. However, this guide was just to show you how you should start until you get to about level 20 in order to have the most success later in the game. This wasn't a guide to tell you what the best pals are and everything else, but I hopefully included a little bit of details on that can help give you an idea of what direction you need to take. If you liked the video, please like, subscribe, and comment. Also, I do stream on Twitch, so if you want to check me out on Twitch, I would really appreciate it. Again, I hope you liked the video, and you guys have a great day.